Hey, everybody, welcome to Arbitrary and Capricious, a podcast where we try not to swear and fail.
Hi, Mom.
I'm one of your hosts, Jay.
And I'm your other host, Aaron. And welcome to episode 12, The Recappening.
The Recappening, I like that. We've both kind of been a little busy lately, I gotta admit.
Yeah.
Neither one of us really had any burgeoning stories on our minds. So we decided that we would just kind of, for our 12th episode, go back over some topics that we discussed in the past and revisit them, recheck in, and see what's going on.
I kind of like this idea, and I wouldn't be opposed to like every 12 episodes doing kind of a global overview of what's happened since we started the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a cool feature, especially since everything is building on top of itself, you know?
Sure.
Like each week we're just kind of talking about the same stuff, just new events in them. So I like the recappening.
Yeah. What if we did it every 10 episodes and we called it Jay and Aaron Decimate the News?
Oh, that's so good. Why didn't you come up with that 2 episodes ago?
I'm very sorry. I just thought of it right now.
All right. We will figure out how to incorporate that because that is fantastic.
Well, thank you.
Oh, gosh.
Well, let's jump in. Aaron, you got any old news?
Well, we got lots of old news. And I think where we have to start, just because of all these are kind of tied together, let's start with the Middle East and Iran and Trump pulling out of the Iranian deal and all of the crazy hoopla that has happened since then. Because I really feel like that was kind of a global shockwave, and the full ramifications haven't really been felt yet.
Right.
So, as we know, there was the Obama-Iranian deal that would essentially prevent Iran from getting nukes for, 10 years, and ease some sanctions. We talked about this last week. And Trump pulls out of the deal, and Iran, gets really pissy. Europe's real pissed at us. And Israel instantly, starts picking a fight with Iran. Now, to be fair, Israel did shoot down an Iranian drone in Israel. So it's not like, they threw the first stone, I guess you could say. But as we said last week, I feel Netanyahu's using this as an attempt to kind of get the heat off of his back. So I believe there was multiple attacks back and forth between Iran and Israel, and everything kind of has stopped.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. After that kind of initial volley back and forth and the violence around opening up the embassy, it feels like there hasn't been. I haven't heard of more violence.
No. But, and you bring up a good point. We also recently, recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moved our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and tons of violence erupted from that. And, the funny thing, which is really terrible for our standing internationally, but also is kind of funny for Trump's ego, is the UN General Assembly voted to, nullify the move and undo our recognition of the capital of Israel as Jerusalem. I don't know how that necessarily works.
Yeah. What's the point of that?
They just voted that our decision to do this was null and void.
So we voted to do this, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't say we voted to do this.
Yeah, we didn't. This was
our executive department decided to do this, and the UN just passed a resolution saying no, you didn't.
Yeah, basically, null and void was the words that they used. So to me, that means that it didn't happen. I mean, we have the building there. They cut the ribbon.
Yeah, there's a plaque on the wall.
There's a plaque on the wall. The seal, that was the big thing. My parents' church had people there. They were sending pictures back to the United States. So it's definitely happened. Oh, are you kidding me? The evangelicals were all over the place over there.
Yeah, that's true.
They're bigger supporter of Israel than the Jews in America are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that blew me away whenever I heard that.
I don't really get it, but
well, this is interesting. I have a lot of friends here in America, Jewish friends, and they're very liberal. And then the Jews that I met in Israel were very, very conservative. They were very pro-Trump, and it was such a weird dichotomy. And I asked a buddy of mine about it, and I was like, "Why is that?" He's like, it's just different culture. Over here, we have to deal with Republicans. It's not fun. He says, we deal with this stuff, and honestly, we're used to being the minority and getting shit on. So we kind of identify with the people who get crapped on in this society too. Over there, they're dominant. They're not the minority. You know, now they obviously are in the region the minority, but they have control. They're in the majority, and it's a very different mentality.
Interesting. Well, to get back to Iran, I've seen that there has been a little bit of chatter about increasing the sanctions. From what I've seen, the European powers are doing their best to keep things together, and at this point, Iran hasn't pulled out. So,
well, but see, companies are already starting to comply. Like that's what I read was that even though Europe has said, "Hey, we're going to try and figure out a way to, navigate through this horrid, entanglement," companies are already starting to just stop doing business with Iran. They're breaking contracts, cutting ties because they don't want the sanctions coming down on them.
Right.
Especially if they're an American company, that instantly was like, sorry guys.
Right.
Nothing we can do.
This makes me think of the ZTE debacle going on.
Yeah, this is good.
So I think this a little bit ties into our previous talk of tariffs, where ZTE is a Chinese, I think they make cell phones, a cell phone manufacturer.
Yes.
And they have been found, there's evidence that has come to light that they have been working around sanctions to do business with both North Korea and Iran. And as a result of us finding out that they've been violating these sanctions, they are now barred from importing any American parts.
Oh.
And that's significant because while all these cell phones are assembled in China,
we make a lot of the little technological pieces.
Right. They get there, especially the chips, which is, I'm not an engineer, but like maybe the most important part of any electronic at this point.
That's probably being manufactured over here in like Dallas and TI.
Yeah, exactly. And so they have been barred from doing so for, I think, a year, maybe 2 years. But what that means is that they're not going to be able to do business for 2 years.
Yeah.
They're not going to be able to get the important parts. So our lovely president has decided to make an exemption for them and ease those sanctions.
He did ease the sanctions.
Right.
I thought he was just talking about it. I didn't know he actually did it.
I thought they did it, but I could be wrong about that.
Oh, no, it was a couple of days ago when I first heard about this.
Right.
But also, wasn't there something else with ZTE? Oh, the other tie into this was that China is investing in like a Trump project in Indonesia. There's like $250 million being infused into it.
You mean a Trump organization? Like his company's project?
Yeah, like in Indonesia, I think China is putting $250 million into the project.
They building a resort or what?
I don't know what they're building. Probably like new Trump towers. But I thought that right around the time that he came out was like, hey, we need to be nice to the ZTE. That also broke. I'll try and pull that up here in a second.
Oh.
But that seems like that's tit for tat, man. That's classic. That's classic corruption.
And you see, I thought we voted for Trump so that he could bring American jobs back, not save Chinese jobs.
I thought we voted for Trump. I didn't vote for Trump first and foremost. But like number one, America first, you're right. That was his whole thing. And it seems like he's not, it's like Trump first. And he's willing to give up anything for that. Screwing the farmland, screw the tech industry. I did see, what is it? Oh, no, that was Bannon. I saw that Bannon was like, we need to stop allowing, and this is Bannon's words. I do not condone this exact statement, but he says we need to stop, not let the Chinese rape Silicon Valley.
Ooh.
Yeah. Harsh words.
Steve.
But, I mean, here's the thing. We can't control China's production, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think having the chips made here is probably the best thing we can do to kind of have any type of negotiating ability with these Chinese companies. I think we have to. This is bullshit. This shows you that American sanctions do have teeth and can force companies to do things whenever we're like, hey, you're not playing by our rules, then you're not playing with us.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if you give a pass to someone every time that they break the sanctions? Like, gosh, Trump is just so frustrating.
And if Iran is so bad that we can't trust them with this deal, well, then why are you rewarding this company that's been going behind your back on the sanctions?
Exactly. Exactly. You're pissed about Iran, you know, and you're just giving away. See, that's why I guarantee it has to be tied to that $250 million.
Yeah, and Mr. Dealmaker over there, you've got the bargaining chip of the century against China, and you're just pissing it away.
You know that company is probably a state-owned company too.
Yeah, I'm sure there's very little over there that does not have some element of state ownership at this point.
Well, and see, this is all coming out at the same time that Trump has announced that they're going to back off the tariffs completely for China, right? Both sides are going to back down and kind of like do a ceasefire and armistice in this trade war, which is what everyone predicted, right? You don't win trade wars. You get to a point where you both have to back down and try and save face.
That's what everybody who isn't just on Twitter and Fox News predicted. I think Trump himself said that trade wars were easy to win, and really, there's no winner here. Like we just sort of pissed each other off, and now they're backing down. But I do want to recognize it's good that they're backing down.
Okay, so this is I found it. Project in Indonesia called Lido City secured a $500 million loan from Metallurgical Corporation of China, which is a state-owned enterprise.
Metallurgical Corporation of China.
Yeah, so he got $500 million for a project in Lido City in Indonesia.
Isn't that just a sinisterly vague name for a company?
I mean, yes, corporations generally have sinisterly vague names, don't they? Like, you just add corporation, enterprise, or anything to any statement, and then add China to the end of it, instantly makes it more, like, notorious sounding.
Yeah, I guess so.
Just the evil state-run corporations. It's like the worst of both worlds, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
A libertarian nightmare. Ooh. So, I mean, speaking of corruption generally, Trump, his entire administration is plagued with it, right? Like, remember Ben Carson got busted for having a $30,000 table set as the housing, like the HUD guy.
Yeah,
and he blamed it on his wife. Didn't the EPA guy? He's flown first class a whole bunch.
Yeah, he took a security detail with him with his family when they went on vacation to Disney World.
Oh my gosh, what a loser! Oh gosh, how do these people think this is okay?
I don't mean at all to argue in favor of Scott Pruitt, but I was discussing this with my family, and they said, if you were a Trump administration official, wouldn't you want a security detail right now? And I thought, okay, fair enough.
You know what? Don't be a shitty human being, and you won't need a security detail. Like, the reason why Scott Pruitt would need one is because, he's worried about eco-terrorists coming and taking him out.
Yeah.
No one's going to take out Ben Carson because they don't like Trump.
Sure.
I might take out Ben Carson for another reason. I don't know why, but gosh, remember whenever he said that the pyramids were built by Joseph to store the grain? Oh gosh, what
did he say that?
He said that. Can you believe that?
Oh, but he was supposed to be so smart.
Oh, because he's a surgeon? I mean, what? He learned a specific thing. I don't understand this. Just because he's a doctor doesn't mean he's necessarily smart or has good policy. The only reason why they say he's smart is because he's a doctor.
Yeah, you're right about that.
I'm sorry. He showed us he's not smart. He showed us. Remember that awkward video where he missed his call out at the debate and just stood there?
He's just standing there.
Come on, man. Come on.
Oh, that's great.
That's great. So, corruption in America. The swamp has not been drained. It has only been made worse. Oh yeah, and then what's Betsy DeVos? She owns a bunch of debt collection companies, and she's in charge of our student loans, America's all the government loans that the government's written over the last like 30 years for students.
Oh, jeez.
Well, it's terrible. This is and then AT&T and Verizon is basically are paying to play, right? Like a bunch of money went to Michael Cohen from AT&T, and they, did they get someone appointed to some part of the government, or was that just Verizon that got somebody appointed?
I think it was just Verizon.
Okay.
From what I saw about AT&T is that they were paying Michael Cohen consulting fees in order to sort of get his take on the president, get advice on how to deal with him. And apparently they found him thoroughly unhelpful. And I think Novartis, which is a Swiss pharmaceutical company, they did the exact same thing. And they paid him, I think, more than double what AT&T did. But they met with him once, decided that he had nothing to offer, and just paid him the rest of the contract anyway, not to talk to them anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Worst lawyer in America.
Yeah, he's up there.
He's up there. Gosh. I mean, it baffles me. It baffles me, these people who bitched and moaned about crony capitalism under Obama because he gave all these contracts to Elon Musk. And I say, what on earth? You guys elected essentially the worst, the most corrupt person, like overtly corrupt. Mm-hmm. This is why we don't need businessmen in office. This is why we need career politicians. Mm-hmm. It's a weird statement for me to make. At this point, I'm like, you know what? If someone's willing to stay as a civil servant their entire life, power to them. Mm-hmm. Don't get greedy. Don't be corrupt. But power to you, bro. Like, do it. Stay civil servant. See, that can't be fun.
To put this in terms that you millennials out there will understand, we need a Leslie Knope, not a Dennis Feinstein.
Yes. Or what was the other guy? The dentist?
Oh,
you just got jammed. Yeah, jam.
Jam. God, I hated that guy.
Oh gosh, he was the worst. I'm stealing that. That's mine now.
There you go. So let's before we just spend this whole time bashing on Trump, you want to take a second and talk some South American corruption?
That's what I was about to transition to. Yeah, I mean, Maduro won his election, right? After everyone was arrested.
Yes. Nicolas Maduro has been reelected as the president of Venezuela.
If you're throwing an N in his name, it's Maduro.
Yes.
Come on.
Maduro. And pretty much all democracies around the world have unitedly disavowed the election, saying that they locked up all of the potential opponents. They literally just bribed the electorate with both money and food.
Isn't that populism?
Yeah. There's some populism in there. To give it a corruption bent, what they're saying is that Maduro used state funds to run his campaign,
which you're not supposed to do.
Which, of course, you're not supposed to do that. So, I mean, I don't want to be too paranoid here, but like, who's watching the Treasury right now for 2020?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we need to be watching.
Yeah, absolutely. So Maduro has been reelected. They even moved up the timetable of the election because his term was supposed to be over in December, and for really no good reason, they've just moved it up to May.
They just went ahead and had the inauguration. Like, we're doing it now.
Yeah, and basically what the observers were saying is whoever wins still isn't going to take office till January. So why would you call an election and then know that you're going to be a lame duck for 7 months? So, it's obviously rigged. He knows he's going to win from the outset. There's no other alternative.
Mm-hmm. He's taking a 7-month vacation.
Yeah. And a lot of people they're simply pointing out that so many Venezuelans are literally starving. There's literally a shortage of food there because of the economic crisis. But Nicolas Maduro is so fat, like, obviously he's getting fed.
Yeah.
So
it's very scientific
if I'm a dictator, I'm gonna go the Putin way because Putin is jacked, right? Like you don't want to. I wouldn't want to get into a street fight with Putin.
Yeah, I definitely looking at the North Korean leader Kim and looking at Maduro, like these are the really really like Putin's obviously terrible, but these guys are awful because it's like their people are starving and they're like feasting. Like that's way worse. Now to the Russian dictator's credit, at least most of his people aren't starving. I mean, I assume there's probably some people starving, but
yeah,
I mean, there's Siberia is a big place, but I mean, you don't hear that. It's not like a third world country.
yeah, and with Venezuela, it's a situation that people in the right or people on the right love to point at Venezuela and say this is what socialism does, and that's not necessarily fair.
No.
I wouldn't necessarily say that I am a big fan of socialism, but to use Venezuela as the poster child for it is really unfair. It's really more the poster child for corruption and economic mismanagement.
Yeah.
They stuck their entire prosperity of their nation on the price of oil. Yeah. And they did very, very well while the price was high. But when the price crashes in 2013, what do you do when you can't pay for all of these wonderful social programs for the poor? You stop paying.
Yeah. Well, but at the same time, what's happening right now? Gas is back above $3 a gallon.
Sure, that's true. It's creeping back up. But do you see any of that going to the people of Venezuela?
I mean, no. And we obviously know that a bunch of this had to do with, Iran pulling out of the Iran deal. Or not Iran, Trump pulling out of the Iran deal. That affected the energy cost. And that's going to trickle down to us. But, yeah, I mean, everything really cratered. Yeah, thanks for that. Everything really cratered when Saudi Arabia just, like, flooded the market back in 2013. I wonder if they're going to do it again.
No, that it wasn't Saudi Arabia flooding the market. It was the proliferation of domestic production here from the fracking.
Well, yeah, but I had heard, maybe this is hearsay, but I had heard that whenever Iran got that Iran deal, like Saudi Arabia was pissed, and to try and prevent Iran from benefiting that much from being able to sell their oil again, they flooded the market in violation of OPEC rules in order to increase the supply and decrease the cost.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I had not heard that. You want to put that in left-wing conspiracy theory corner?
Dude, I'm going to look it up right now. I'm just saying that this is definitely something I heard whenever the Iran deal was going down. Because, I mean, we know Iran and Saudi Arabia hate each other.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But, I mean, there is a lot of domestic production. You're not wrong. But,
yeah, the analysis that I read at the time was that because of that increase in domestic production for a period of time, I don't know if it's still true, but the United States was actually the biggest producer of oil. And the hitch is that fracking is a very expensive process especially in comparison to the Gulf nations like Saudi Arabia. They can produce oil much, much, much cheaper than we can. So some were speculating that when the price crashed, that would force a lot of the domestic producers out of business because it wasn't cost effective anymore. So
this is interesting. They had a peak production in 2013, which was its highest point since 1980. And then in 2015, they did it again.
You're talking about Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, they boosted their production to the highest levels they had ever had.
Well, the Iran deal was 2015, and
it says that 2013 they did it, and in 2015. I'm wondering if our increased production, Saudi Arabia being an ally, increased production also.
Right. That's also what I was remembering from that was that the Saudis at that point had a choice where they could cut the price, they could cut production in order to try and inch up the price, but if they did that, that would just encourage more American investment and exploration. Mm-hmm. So they said, you know what? You want cheap oil? You got it, buddy. And they just flooded the market. But the motivation about Iran is interesting.
2015, it says they did it again. It said that the minister came out and announced that they were raising them back to the 2013 levels, which were the highest since 1980.
Interesting. Like I remember that when the news came down in 2015 that that OPEC had decided not to cut production, that they were going to keep it up, keep it up. I was in the airport and there were all these guys in like, really nice suits, like practically kissing each other over that decision. I guess that must have been some kind of oil guys, but I was like,
Yeah.
hey,
I don't know that that's the oil guys be kissing each other because the oil people have been pretty poor lately.
that's
Having
true.
family down in South Texas that are in the oil business, they have been struggling the last few years. So it's not been black gold
Right.
recently.
Well, with more instability, that's just going to make the price go higher. So we'll see.
That's for sure. Instability is the worst, and Trump is like the most unstable person that you could possibly have as president.
Yeah.
So, I guess we can also now talk about the Koreas, because Trump has once again caused problems in Korea. I mean, Trump really is just like the epicenter of so much bullshit.
Well, you were quite optimistic.
I was very
about
optimistic.
These upcoming talks.
I was optimistic not because of, but I will. Can I point out? I was optimistic, but I did say Trump has done everything to hinder the advancement of these talks. What did I say before anything happened? I said John Bolton. I said appointing John Bolton was bullshit. You shouldn't have done it. It's just going to cause. It's just giving North Korea something to bitch about, to latch on to give you a reason not to do the deal. What did they do last week? Oh, they bitched about John Bolton. It's exactly what I said was going to happen. Okay.
Well, did you see what he said?
Yeah, he said, let's do the Libya route and
Libya model.
The Libyan model.
John Oliver was completely correct about this. He said that is literally the worst thing you could say in this situation.
Absolutely, because ultimately, Gaddafi got deposed and murdered. So that's not what Kim Jong-un wants.
That's the whole reason why he has a nuke in the first place, trying to avoid that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, geez, Mr. Walrus, get your act together.
So, yeah, exactly. And I think, was it now they're saying that maybe the summit, the Trump Korea summit, would be delayed. Mm-hmm. Also, this is hilarious. We're supposed to have these like joint military exercises with South Korea, and North Korea gets pissy about them, and Trump backs off. Like, we've lost all bargaining power.
Wait, so they've have they canceled or changed those military exercises?
I believe that what I read was that they were pissed about some like B-2 bombers flying over something, and Trump actually backed off. Sorry, my dog's whining.
Oh, is that Zeke?
Yeah, he got sick earlier. He threw up. I had to clean it up.
Oh, poor Zeke.
Yeah, I think he just got excited because he was fine, and then all of a sudden he just like vomited, and I was like, "What on earth?" It's out of nowhere, and I was like, "Well, I'm gonna clean this up now." But no, I opened his door, and he won't push the kennel door all the way open. He's like over there whining. Big baby. I love that guy.
Maybe one day you'll be able to listen to this too.
He wouldn't listen. He's not interested.
You don't think he would?
No.
Oh.
It's a dog.
Well,
see, sorry, I lost my North Korea tab. Oh yeah, okay. So also Pompeo, I believe, is going to cause, or Pompeo is going to cause problems. Ultimately, he's already saying that we're going to like blow up any Iranian soldiers that come into Israel, which I don't know why we're threatening that shit.
Why would you threaten that?
I just and Hezbollah. He also threatened Hezbollah, which is great to have our Secretary of State out there running his mouth. And so yeah,
that's not what you're supposed to do.
No. So yeah, the Korean summit may be delayed due to some of the tension that's building up between the North Korea and us. South Korea should be pissed right now at us. Like, honestly, they should be like objectively pissed at us because like they've worked so hard. Mm-hmm. They've worked so hard to bring North Korea to the table. They had that wonderful Olympic ceremony and all that crap. And Trump has just put his fat fingers all over everything and screwed it up.
Well, I think that President Moon was in Washington this week tutoring Trump on what he needs to know.
He has to. I mean,
Yeah.
Lord have mercy. And quit feeding his ego. He needs someone to just cut through the bullshit and say, Trump, you're an idiot. Keep your mouth shut. Let's get this done.
Mm-hmm.
This is
So,
what I wish it's John Kelly as his chief of staff, right?
yes.
Okay. I wish John Kelly was the kind of guy who would actually tell Trump that, who would say, look, no offense, Mr. President, but you're a moron. And you need to be told that you're a moron.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the American people elected you a moron. And it's because of Benjamin Franklin's famous quote, the masses are asses.
Mm-hmm.
The masses are asses. And that's the problem.
Yeah, but I think the reality of the situation is that if any Trump staffer actually said that to him, they'd just be fired on the spot. And so no one's ever going to do that out of self-preservation.
See, this is what's wrong with yes men. You know, having a culture that is, not risk averse, I guess. You know, is it risk averse? I can always get that backwards. But they're not willing to risk their job and say the right thing, to do the right thing. They're just willing to sit there and say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, even if it leads us down the path to hell.
Yeah. But to recapinate something else, I want to revisit our Fogo bet, because I think we discussed this off the air, but we have not updated it since, where I raised the possibility that the Nobel Peace Prize could be awarded to multiple people in a single year.
That's true.
I think in the past they awarded it to Arafat and I think it was Ariel Sharon. It was the Palestinian leader and an Israeli leader when they signed some of those accords back in the 90s.
Arafat and Sharon.
So it is conceivably possible that the Nobel Prize could be awarded to Kim, to Moon, to Trump, or any combination thereof.
This is true.
And what we agreed off the air is that I believe our bet is that what did we bet that was it Kim wins?
The original bet was that Kim would win,
right,
instead of Trump.
So if Kim wins, then I pay, right?
Yes.
All right, and I conceded that I am willing to honor the bet, even in the situation where it's a joint win.
Yes,
because I think that's still completely nuts. And I just like Fogo. So
yeah, and so if it just completely blows up and no one wins, I lose, right? And I just pay.
Correct.
All right, that's fine. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with taking this to Fogo because obviously Trump can't get through this. I have no faith, no confidence. I mean, I said it. I said the John Bolton was going to be a bargaining chip for the North Koreans, and it is. I guarantee you that Iran's going to be one. They're going to point to it, and they're going to have the upper hand. I mean, right now we're bending over backwards to try and not offend them. Well, no, we're not. We're obviously not bending over backwards to not offend them, but we're having to teach Trump just to be, how to talk to the North Koreans.
Mm-hmm.
I have very little confidence in him.
I think the American people, as well as the people of the world, would share that sentiment.
You would hope, but for some reason, the Trumpsters they it's like a cult, man. It's like a cult.
Yeah,
they it's like, so what? He lied. He's corrupt. He's still our guy. My dad says something good. He said, it shouldn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. The standard should be the same. If a Democrat does something that is corrupt, they shouldn't get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
And you shouldn't pass just because they're your political party. Mm-hmm. That's something that is defunct about this era, is that the echo chamber is so important to people that they're willing to just feed that cognitive dissonance and just ignore anything that goes counter to their worldview.
Mm-hmm.
It's so crazy to me.
It's the world we live in. But to continue the recappening, do you want to talk some electoral reform that might offer some answers here?
Absolutely.
So in California, for their primaries, they have instituted I think they call it a 2-vote primary.
Okay.
Or maybe it's a 2-candidate primary. But basically, instead of having separate primaries for Republicans and for Democrats, they just have everybody vote on the same ballot and you get to pick one.
Mm.
And then the top two go to the general election and you get to pick the top two. And this is irrespective of party. So I think like the last Senate election was a Democrat versus a Democrat.
Interesting.
And so the idea behind this is that it will encourage the candidates at the primary level, which is where the candidates come from to begin with, to, rather than be, fundamentalists, encourage them to appeal to as many voters as possible, to have a broader appeal, hopefully bring people back towards the center. And from what I was reading, the results have been a little mixed. There's been some good, some bad, but on the whole, it seems like California is moving a little bit back towards the center.
Interesting.
Which of all places, where, would you expect that? No, not really. But on the other hand, it's also created situations where the parties are trying to game the system, where they're encouraging some candidates to just drop out because they're afraid they will steal votes away from the more probable candidates. There's also, the parties have been trying to encourage their voters to vote for specific candidates from the other parties in hopes of having a situation where you've got a great Democrat against a really awful Republican. And
this is manipulative.
Yeah. So it's an interesting situation. It's not something that I was aware of, and so we didn't cover it when we talked about electoral reform. But I think creating a primary that actually engages people, I think that's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's weird that a liberal bastion would try it, but at the same time, I could see how whenever, like, if the crazy, super crazy liberal wins in your district and you're just like a moderate liberal, you're like, man, I really wish somebody would not just be, psycho anti-vaxxer, fruit nut as my electorate.
Yeah, like
as my representative.
Slapping all those warning labels on the coffee cups.
Oh my gosh. Warning, California coffee may cause cancer.
Yeah. But the explanation that I was given about why California did this in the first place is that it's partly because they're so crazy liberal, is that anything with reform on it, they're almost like, hey, let's give it a go.
Interesting.
So some things going to work, some things aren't going to work.
We'll have to keep an eye on that. I like that. Well, let's since we've gone back domestic, as we are both aware, there was a shooting here in Texas just recently in Santa Fe. I actually don't know where Santa Fe, Texas is.
It's about 30 miles south of Houston.
Okay, wow.
I don't know Santa Fe is actually the town or just the name of the school or what.
Okay, I thought it was Santa Fe, Texas. I
could be wrong. But I do know that it's a outer fringe suburb of Houston.
Okay. Well, terrible shooting down there in South Texas. And how many people were killed? It was 10, right?
I think it was 8 students and 2 teachers.
Oh gosh, it's horrible. And this gentleman, didn't he used shotguns and pistols?
Yeah, that is what I read.
Yeah, no assault rifle in this shooting. But I mean, obviously it's still dangerous weapons. And most people don't think about this, but I had a conversation on Facebook this week about this. But most handguns are semi-automatic; they can shoot really fast. Mm-hmm. It's not like a revolver, and you can load a lot of bullets into those things. 14, I think, is some of them, depending on the magazine. I can't remember if it's Clipper magazine. I know that one of them is wrong, but I just really awful, and once again raises the questions about gun control, and it brings it back into the national conversation. It feels awful once again to be here, but it's like every 19 to 30 days we have a school shooting to talk about, and it's probably even more often than that. Just these are the ones that hit the big news.
And this is just dripping with hypocrisy, but I feel like it has to be a symptom of the coverage. that the people who perpetrate these crimes are given notoriety, and then the people who are unstable, who have a bent towards doing something like this, it's their chance to be famous.
I definitely, yeah, I agree with that. I had a conversation today actually about that we don't need to give glory to these killers. Like, we should never mention their names. We should never, show their pictures. We should only mention the victims.
Mm-hmm. But this is Trump's America, and ratings equals winning.
Yeah.
So attention, no matter good, bad, no, it doesn't matter. That's going to get you popularity. That's going to get you sympathy. I mean, there were all of those girls out there who were writing letters to the Boston bomber in prison and saying how attractive he was. I think it doesn't matter how awful of a criminal you are. There's going to be a portion of the population that aspires to be you and lifts you up as a hero.
Yeah, no, but that's also, isn't that kind of like a trope at this point? Like the lonely women that write to convicts, and even Charles Manson, didn't he have like a girlfriend on the outside when he died at 80?
Oh yeah, sure. It's a trope, but it's a trope for a reason, because it happens.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's so common, but I don't know if that's an aspect necessarily of Trump's America. I think that's just an aspect of America, unfortunately.
Well, sure. But I guess I mean to say that in the way that we refer to eras of, like the Victorian era. It wasn't necessarily Victoria's policies. It's just, this is what was going on.
I feel you.
I guess maybe it's more accurate to say the Instagram era.
Well, I guess one of the things I thought was interesting is the different response from Parkland. The Parkland kids, they became very active in politics very quickly. I mean, almost instantaneously, they were talking about it.
Yeah, I wonder what the difference is. I wonder if those Parkland kids were just particularly motivated and organized.
That might be part of it, but I did read something that said that, for the community down there, they said it's just we heal differently than they do. We want to be with our family and, mourn and kind of like move past this. And I do know that one kid was contacted by Vice, and he recorded from the day of the shooting forward, like the aftermath and how people were feeling. So that's kind of an interesting insight into it. But yeah, there was just a very different response. Now also Texas, different state. I wouldn't necessarily say different culture, because there's a pretty big gun culture in Florida.
Well, by the numbers, wasn't Parkland the worst shooting we've had at this point?
I believe so. It was 14.
That might be a part of it. Is just this is awful to say, but it had that extra edge of, this is the worst one ever.
And that was like the hair that broke the camel's back for some of those kids.
Yeah. Well, this Texas one is just like, oh, another one.
Back to normal. A sad statement. You might be right. It's very unfortunate. Now, I believe that at some point it leaked out to the media that this was about a girl.
Yes, I saw a lot of reaction in my own feed to this aspect of the story.
And we were talking about this actually before the cast. We thought this was a good way of kind of tying the incels, is that, this girl, the story was that a few days before the shooting, this guy had come to this girl who was actually ended up being a victim of the shooting, and asked her out, and she rebuffed his advances multiple times, very, very publicly. And so the story got to the BBC and the Guardian, and everybody's reporting that this is the reason why that the shooting happened, was that because he was rebuffed, and so he just went and took out his rage. But the family members said that this story came from the mother, and she was estranged of one of the daughters, and I don't remember which daughter it was or which girl it was, but she was estranged, and they were like, we can't corroborate what she's saying. We don't know where she got this. We don't know who she heard this from. We don't know that this happened. So there's no evidence that this actually is about a girl, even though the news is reporting that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that until he told me that, and I hesitate to say this, but I'm relieved to hear that, because that seems like such. If that really was the fuse, then how many fuses are being lit every single day by people being rejected? Because rejection's part of life.
Absolutely, and that's what I was saying is like some of the conservatives are saying it's because of bullies, and my first statement was in 1998, the two kids that shot up Columbine were bullied. You've had 20 years to work on bullying, and you elected a bully as president. You don't get to bitch about bullying now.
Yeah,
you don't get to blame it on bullying.
There was a lot of that in Parkland as well about the bullying.
Yeah.
And a response I heard from the kids was this guy was unstable and violent and he was an asshole. And we did try to reach out to him and he was a dick.
Yeah.
So like, what do you want us to do?
Well, bullying, that's like, unfortunately part of human nature,
Yeah. Like, I've been bullied as an adult. It's life. You need to learn how to deal with it.
It's learning to deal with assholes. When we went to law school, I remember in practice court, they were like, look, sometimes judges are assholes. You got to learn how to deal with assholes.
Yeah. Speaking of assholes, Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, blamed the shooting on too many doors.
Too many doors.
Too many doors. Too many doors.
Doors, man.
Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, are you telling me that we need to turn every single public school into a compound with one entrance and one exit that is patrolled by guards and everybody gets patted down as they go in? Is that the world you want to live in?
It's insane to me that people don't understand this. Like, we have to balance in our society order and liberty. I don't want to live in a prison. I don't want to live in North Korea. I don't want to live in a fascist dictatorship. I'm not willing to give up my freedoms, but at the same time, the freedoms are not absolute. It's ridiculous. The Constitution only protects your right to a handgun in the home for self-defense. Everything above that is privilege. We can regulate these weapons. We can do it very stringently, and we don't run afoul of the Constitution. There is nothing other than NRA bullshit propaganda standing in the way.
Yeah. Did you see who is the president of the NRA now?
Yeah, Ollie North.
Yeah, Iran can't. I'm butchering that. Iran Contra, Oliver North.
Yeah, the guy who took the fall for Reagan.
Like, who's going to be their president 20 years from now? Harvey Weinstein? Like,
that's terrible.
But really, like.
Well, I think it's hilarious that this guy sold weapons to Iran, right? Through the South American Contra or something like that. So
they sold the weapons to Iran and then funneled that money to anti-communist rebels in Nicaragua.
Okay, that's what it was.
He sold weapons to Iran to fund terrorism, basically.
That's horrid. And this is the president of the NRA. They're just a horrid organization.
You know what? I should take that back. I don't know if Oliver North was necessarily the guy who was like, let's do this, as much as...
He's the fall guy. He was the fall
guy. And I think he's the one who was kind of the whistleblower on it.
No. He was the one who went to the congressional hearing, and he was just like, I don't recall.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'm getting him confused with somebody else.
Yeah.
But still, this is your leader?
Mm-hmm.
Really? But who's that other guy with the glasses?
Oh, LaPierre?
Yeah, what's his
I don't know what his claim to fame beyond being NRA president, but he just was NRA president for the last 10 years or something.
Oh, so he's out now.
I think he's no longer the president.
Okay, gotcha.
Ollie North has been elected. Before him was Clint Eastwood or something.
Charlton Heston,
probably from My Cold Down Figures, right?
Yes.
Okay. But yeah, we kind of sashay into incel discussion,
Yeah, the response that I saw a lot about the aspect of the story about this was caused by a rejection, a romantic rejection. I saw a lot of people coming out and saying that this is victim blaming, to blame the shooting on the girl who rejected him, because the the media coverage was saying that the rejection caused he caused the shooter to be embarrassed. And they were saying that framing it as embarrassment is like disrespectful and victim blaming to the girl who rejected him.
I can see the argument. I understand the argument that, hey, this guy was an asshole. He came and shut up it. There is no blame. You don't get to escape your actions. You made the decision to load the gun and bring it in. Okay? It doesn't matter what your rationalizations are. You're the asshole.
Yeah, okay? Absolutely.
And so it's kind of like the people who are like, well, he was bullied. I don't give a shit if he was bullied. I was bullied. I didn't bring a gun to school. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I can understand that argument. I told my buddy today, like he was like, well, we need to like do counseling. And I said, we can talk about counseling after we pass gun reform. We can talk about bullying after we pass gun reform. We can talk about any additional things that you want to do to try and address the culture of violence in America. But we need to deal with the guns now. Because 19 days from now, we could have another school shooting and 10 people be dead.
Sure. Well, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But let me play devil's advocate for just one moment.
Do it.
So we did acknowledge earlier that the weapons used here were a shotgun and a handgun. And absolutely. Leaving aside the fact that he's a minor and that I don't think he'd be able to buy those just period. Like, I don't think minors can buy guns at all.
Mm-hmm.
The common sense gun reform, like banning assault rifles and high capacity magazines, that wouldn't have helped anything here.
No, but two regulations would have: requiring people who own firearms to secure them, otherwise imposing liability on them, would have the people who had those guns, they would have been locked in safes or put trigger locks on them so that this guy couldn't have utilized them. Two, okay, if we have sorry, that's really the only one I have. So if we well, wait, I did have another point. I definitely lost my train of thought. But if we have trigger locks on them, or if we put them in safes, so we require that's what it is. If we require that people who do not, the parents who don't secure their weapons and their kids get it and shoot somebody or take it to school and shoot some kids up, if we make them liable, people are not going to leave their shit out and about. We have to change the culture. And guess what? That can be part of sensible and reasonable gun control. I don't think that having a trigger lock, which is like, what, $15, unreasonably burdens your exercise of your constitutional right. Why isn't whoever left these guns negligently around for this kid to get, why are they not liable?
Once again, I'm with you. I think both of your suggestions about the trigger locks and the general liability, I think those are good ideas. But I think I'm gonna have to disagree on whether or not that's gonna actually be effective or work, because I don't think people are gonna change their ways.
Dude, you start taking away guns, people will buy trigger locks, people will buy safes. You start, hey,
man,
gun collector, your 45 guns that you have, your son took a gun to school and shot up some people. We're going to sell your guns and pay for the funerals of the kids who died. And guess what? Tomorrow, I guarantee you, tomorrow, we're going to have people buying those until they're sold out.
You see, but you just blew the dog whistle because you used the phrase "take your guns."
Yeah, well, guess what? That's called liability, bitch. And you guess what? Guess what? You don't get to if you don't pay your taxes, your guns go to the government to pay your bill. I'm just saying. We're gonna tie it all in, and it's specifically if it's because of you did not secure your guns. That's the first thing they sell.
Yeah, no, sure, but what I'm saying is that kind of rhetoric is just gonna turn off the right. And we're never going to be able to get anything done, which is the current situation.
But here's the thing. Zeke, calm down. Here's the thing. It reeks of personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That is like the gold standard for Republicans. Republicans, as long as you guys follow the law, have your trigger locks, secure your shit, you got a safe harbor. Like if you secure everything and your kid like steals the key and like welds, like cuts open the vaults and everything and gets the guns and goes to shoot them up, I think that you should not be liable. Like that kid was going to do it no matter what. But if you're the guy who just has the gun in a bag or in your car or in the closet, and it can just be got to. How many times you hear the story about the 3-year-old, the toddler that gets the gun?
Mm-hmm.
How is that even possible? I never had loaded guns growing up around. They were always in a place where I couldn't get to as a kid. And the ammo was always in a different room than the guns.
It's people being negligent.
It's people being negligent. And honestly, if we have a statute that just tells the courts exactly how to deal with this,
Mm-hmm.
I think it gets people's attention. It says, hey, you get to keep your guns unless you're negligent.
You get to keep them, but you got to take care of them.
You got to take care of them. You got to be a responsible gun owner.
You got to pick up after it. You got to feed it.
Yeah. Bathe it, wash it, clean it.
Mm-hmm.
Zeke, lay down. Sorry, my dog is like eating food and wandering around like a goober.
Oh, poor Zeke. Well, before I get too worked up about guns, let's see if we can move it on a little bit. What else we got on the list?
So, this wave of teacher strikes has continued across America.
Mm-hmm.
Their strikes have started in North Carolina for better pay and better medical benefits. And a recent poll went out in Louisiana where the teachers were asked if they would support a strike for better pay, and they all, I think, overwhelmingly said that they would. So I think we're starting to see, even though the Supreme Court this week completely irrationally undermined unions in this country this week.
Did that case get decided?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. I believe that there is a movement towards support for unions once again in this country, and I think it's time. I think that's something that we need in this country is the revitalization of unions, because the corporations have gotten very, very powerful over the last 15 years.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I can't believe I'm saying this, but unions are important.
Unions are important.
The erosion of the unions has contributed to the increasing inequality in this country.
Absolutely. Now, segueing over to the Supreme Court, this outrageous decision written by Injustice Gorsuch, basically they came down and said that the Federal Arbitration Act trumps the National Labor Relations Act.
Mm-hmm.
If your company gets you to sign a contract, an employment contract, even though it's a union state and a union job, that requires you to arbitrate any conflicts, you cannot use collective bargaining, and they cannot negotiate that conflict for you. Completely gutting the ability of unions to do any type of negotiations.
Yeah, isn't that what a union's purpose is? To collectively bargain?
Outrageous. And here's the thing. Notorious, Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote the dissent, and she pointed out that the National Labor Relations Board Act or National Labor Relations Act was passed after the Federal Arbitration Act. And so isn't that a little ridiculous that they would wouldn't they say, hey, but if you arbitrate, would they put an arbitration provision in the statute or something if you're creating this entity that's supposed to govern the way unions negotiate?
Yeah, that doesn't really make a lot of sense.
It just makes no sense to me that this is the way. And obviously, conservatives hate unions because it's where the Democrats get their power. But this is what I hate: is it's coming to a place where it's no longer about what's right or wrong or what's good policy. It's getting to the place where we're deciding things on how we can hurt the opponent's base. Mm-hmm. And that is what's really frustrating. Now, to be fair, the Republicans did that in 2003 to the lawyers. They just gutted the plaintiffs' lawyers' medical malpractice who support the Democrats, which pushed us even farther into, insane conservative territory and got us Dan Patrick as our lieutenant governor. But I honestly believe that moves like this are going to shift the culture. I think that the unions are going to have a chance, an opportunity to be relevant in our society again, but they got to move. I think they need to capitalize on corporate greed, capitalize on the corruption in Washington, capitalize on net neutrality, capitalize on this shit where these corporations are just ramrodding the American public.
Mm-hmm.
You know, make a big deal about it.
You know, I was interested in this case, and I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't hear that it came out. But maybe let's save this for another week, because I think I might want to like go in depth on this.
Well, maybe next week we can go in depth into this one. But yeah,
I want to take things back to the teachers.
Okay.
And I first want to say that I am in favor of teachers. I think they're great, and I think they should be paid more. I think that their status in society should be higher than it is. But on an individual level, I have very little sympathy for teachers, because what's the one job you know of that the one thing you know about it is it's tough and it doesn't pay much? Teaching. So it's not like any of these teachers got into teaching and then was like, oh, this is how much I make. This is such a surprise.
But see, I think that that's kind of a very short-sighted young person perspective, because like I was reading about some people who've been teaching since the 90s, and they're like, we're making less than we were making even accounting for inflation now.
Yeah, and that's bad.
So what about them, who some of these teachers' union jobs pre-1989, pre-Reagan destroying the unions, were good jobs in the South.
Well, you know what,
were well-paying jobs with good benefits. You know, it's become shitty because of what has happened over the last 25 years.
Sure, but what I would tell these teachers is go on strike. I mean, really go on strike. Quit. Move to a different states. Because what's the one thing that drives up wages? It's a shortage of labor. Create a shortage of labor and wages will go up.
Not whenever the government artificially reduces the amount of money they have on hand to pay you and then use that as a bargaining chip to make you take less money.
No, but if all of our teachers quit and we don't have teachers, society isn't going to stand for that.
But remember what the Oklahoma teachers did. They kept paying for, they made school lunches for the kids. This is not about punishing the kids. And I feel like quitting, leaving the state, ultimately punishes the kids.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We don't need a generation of kids that like missed the third grade because the teachers are striking. We definitely need to solve this, and we shouldn't even be here. We shouldn't even be here. These should be the jobs that we are paying the most, not the fucking football coach down at UT. You know, the highest paid government employee in Texas is the UT football coach. That is an outrageous statistic.
Mm-hmm. In most states, that's true.
But that's bullshit.
Yeah. It
makes me angry.
Mm-hmm. But that's capitalism.
What's wrong. Well, that's what's wrong. Is it? Yeah. It's about entertainment, not education.
It's about the money. It's about the income. Money. You know, if it's just, you know, sports is easy to pick on, but it's just because that's the most profitable arm of the university.
It's true.
You know, if the university had a really profitable cocaine plantation, then I'm sure the highest paid employee would be whoever ran that.
Yeah, no, it's just frustrating. Capitalism gets really annoying sometimes. You made a statement about Venezuela being the poster child for libertarians and Republicans bashing socialism, and I saw a meme this week where someone was like, you know, it's funny. Do we get to point to the ghettos in Baltimore and the starving children like across all 50 states as the failure of capitalism?
Yeah.
Do we get to point out the growing inequality between the poor and the rich as a failure of capitalism? Do we get to point out the fact that we're the only country on earth where you can go bankrupt from medical bills?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want communism, but at the same time, at some point, what's the point of progress if it's not benefiting society? Is it just to line the pockets of a few people, or is it to better humanity and to achieve our potential? That's what I don't understand, is capitalism has no societal insight. it will sell razor blades and lighters to babies if they're willing to buy it.
That's true.
It's all based off greed, man. If your
is.
greed benefits society and society wants it, then it's great. Honestly, we don't need to be building all this consumer shit with the precious metals that we have. We could be using it for much better purposes, much more efficient purposes. You know?
Yeah, but then
instead of a cell phone that only lasts. But you know what? We can make a phone that lasts more than a year. We can make a phone that doesn't fucking bog down in 6 months after using it. Like, that is just pure greed. Apple sabotages their phone, so you have to buy a new one within 2 years. Samsung does the same thing. I don't trust these companies. I don't trust them. You know? And these, there's gold, platinum, there's palladium, there is precious earth metals in every single one of these devices. You know?
And the only way we're going to get more is pulling it out of the asteroids.
Pulling out of the asteroids. We're going to have to mine space. But I'm just saying.
And then the OPA gets involved.
The OPA. Are you so happy that The Expanse got picked up by Amazon?
Oh, did they?
Yes, it got picked up for a 4th season by Amazon.
Oh,
I was dancing yesterday.
That's great news.
Great news. Both of the 2 shows that got canceled last week that I loved, both got saved. I was just ecstatic.
Oh, so what was the other one?
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, yeah.
I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It got canceled by Fox and picked up by NBC.
Yeah.
One of my that's one of my favorite sitcoms. Hands down.
Interesting.
It's one of those ones I can throw on and watch any episode and just laugh. Terry loves yogurt. Sorry. Oh gosh, completely lost my train of thought.
That's okay. We were just talking about how bad capitalism is.
Yeah. Well, it's just that this is, and I love this. Das Kapital was the book written by Karl Marx, and it was a critique of capitalism. Most people don't understand this, but Karl Marx's entire life's work was critiquing capitalism.
Yeah, he was an economist.
He was an economist. Like, they think that Communist Manifesto was his life's work and that was everything that he lived for. No, that was something he did later. Like, the majority of his career was critiquing capitalism. And he pointed out that it turns us into machines. It dehumanizes us. It just uses us until we're done, and it cares not for society. That's why he tried to come up with communism. How do you harness the engine of capitalism so that it benefits everybody? You know, it's just that, you know, dictators and totalitarians have used his ideas to, you know, basically shit on poor people. So, and rich people, to be fair, but not a great solution.
No. Didn't really pan out for a few of the places that tried it.
No, then true communism's never been actually achieved. Because true communism calls for no leaders. Can you name a country that has no leaders?
No, and I honestly don't think that humans have the capacity to live in a society like that. Like you anarchists out there, oh, shut up.
Yeah, shut up.
That's never going to happen, man.
No. Go to Somalia. Go to Somalia if you want to see anarchy. That is horrid living conditions. No one wants to. Somalians don't want to live in Somalia. You know? Yeah. Why do you think they're all pirates?
Like, there was a guy I went to college with who's one of those like hardcore anarchists in that he posts about it on Facebook frequently, like he's you know actually doing anything about it. And I just want to say, did you drive on a road today? Like, did you stop at a red light that stopped the other people from ramming into you? You know, if you were injured, would you be able to call the emergency services? Like, shut up, man. Like, just take the benefits.
There's too many people for libertarianism and anarchy to work. Just in general. There's too many people.
We need a new plague.
Don't say that. We don't need those things. We need to just become better human beings and not shit all over each other. Like, that's what we need to do. Not pray for just a third of the Earth's population to get wiped out so we have less people to deal with.
Like, I almost feel like people who live in rural areas should be forced to live in a dense city for like a month, just because it seems like in countries with denser populations, more city-driven places, socialism is always much more popular because there's a little bit more of that, hey, like, it's not all about me. There's a million other people in this city, so we need to be good to one another.
Well, and it gets back to that whole like the American individual mentality. Screw everybody else. I'm going to pull myself up by my bootstraps all by myself, and then expect everyone else to do the same. And it's like, okay, yeah, Trump, when your dad gives you like a $10 million loan, those are not bootstraps, and you didn't pull yourself out of nothing. That's the problem, is that the game is tilted. It's not bootstraps my ass.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people that have that philosophy didn't do shit for their money.
Yeah, absolutely.
My dad one time made the suggestion. He said, we should just like prevent inheritance. Just like everybody gets the same amount of money, like at a certain age, like 18, and then take all the money whenever you die goes towards this fund. And so like all of society benefits from the individual collectively. So you can make as much money as you want, but ultimately your kids at the end of the day get the same amount as everybody else.
Yeah, and a lot of the billionaires, or I guess maybe I shouldn't say a lot of, but people like Warren Buffett, Mark Zuckerberg, and the Gateses, they've basically made pledges to that effect that they're really not going to give. I don't mean to say they're not going to give anything to their children.
Their kids are still set up,
but they've made promises to donate, to give away their fortunes by the time of their death or after their death.
Mm-hmm.
And this was I think Andrew Carnegie from the 1890s. He also followed this, while people like JP Morgan did not. So I think it's admirable that there are people out there who are doing this of their own volition.
I agree. And I'm not necessarily advocating for that. Like, it's not something I necessarily believe in. But I do find it interesting that the people who expect people to pull themselves up by the bootstraps are usually ones who never have had to.
Yeah.
It's annoying. It's annoying, just generally. I feel like it's kind of like whenever, I don't know, you don't have kids, I don't have kids, but like when someone's like, oh, you'll understand when you have kids, like, I don't need to have kids to understand concepts. I just don't agree with you.
We don't have any kids that we know of.
I don't have any kids. I definitely don't have any kids.
That you know of.
It's true, but I also don't have any kids. So.
Oh man! Well, before we get too far in the weeds, what else we got? Before we make this a 3-hour cast.
This is true. We'll end here. I believe this is a very neutral place to end. But the Senate passed essentially net neutrality. A bill came to the floor that essentially would restore the Obama-era net neutrality rules and undo the FCC's horrid Freedom of the Internet Act of 2017. Now, it's going to the House, and all of the observers have said that it has a very tough uphill battle, which generally pisses me off because this should not be an uphill battle. This is net neutrality. But we'll have to just watch. But to me, this is a victory. The fact that it passed the Senate and it didn't get shot down at all or revised 10 times, that tells me that at least there's a shot.
Yeah, that it passed in the first place because the Republicans have a majority of the Senate, correct?
Yeah.
So,
and that what's his face, that old turtle, McConnell, even led it on the floor.
Oh man! So I am equally hopeful.
And just for all my Beto fans out there, Beto made a note this week that Ted Cruz voted against net neutrality. So if you're voting in Texas in 2018, vote Beto because Ted Cruz voted against net neutrality.
I was in Austin last week for work. And as I'm coming out of downtown, there were people on one of the bridges over 35 that is just always gridlocked under it with a Ted Cruz protest. They had these massive signs that went the length of the bridge saying, "Repeal and replace Ted Cruz."
Excellent. Good. I hope he loses. And I hope he loses big.
Oh, yes.
Oh, gosh.
It's not going to happen, but I'd like it.
We also need to just have a day where we read some of the tweets from Ted Cruz's college roommate.
Oh
Where
yeah,
he,
I
he
forgot
tells
about that.
all the stories of how terrible he is.
Oh, I look forward to that. Well, before we wrap up, you want to check the mailbag?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. To all you viewers out there, you can reach us with your arbitrary and capricious questions. Anything you want to ask us, we are open books. Ways you can get in contact with us are our Gmail. You can email us at arbitrarycapriciouspodcast@gmail.com. You can also tweet at us. We've got a Twitter. We are found on Twitter at ArbCapPod. And if you want to talk about the cast, you can use the hashtag ArbCapPod. Actually, I think I got that backwards. The Twitter handle is at ArbCapPodcast, and the hashtag is ArbCapPod. Anyway, let's check the mailbag. We got got a question this week from Claire in Sydney. She says, "Good day, mates. I've been really enjoying the podcast." Well, thank you, Claire. But I'm looking for other podcasts to listen to. What would you guys recommend?
Ah, well, I don't know any Australian podcasts per se, but I will say that one of my all-time favorite bands, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, are from Australia, and they're amazing. So that's just awesome. But definitely podcasts that I like. A big fan of The Daily. I like to listen to that. I love the Trailer Park Boys podcast, if I'm being honest. It's just fun to watch the characters just basically bullshitting around for an hour and a half talking about stuff. I think one of my favorite episodes was when Ricky fell asleep on the gun. You remember that, Jay?
Yes.
Outrageous. What about you, Jay? What podcast do you like to listen to?
Oh man, there's a few podcasts I listen to that are kind of niche.
You went and
but
saw a podcast just recently live, didn't you?
Yeah. On Friday nights, I went to see The Greatest Generation, which is I'll say it. It's my favorite podcast.
Okay.
It's a Star Trek podcast where these two guys humorously review old Star Trek episodes. And for me, that's my dessert at the end of my work week, where whenever I wrap up my last project for the week, on my drive home, I put on The Greatest Generation, and I love it.
Sorry.
Are you good?
Do they actively review it while watching it, or do they just give you their thoughts about the episode after the episode?
It's not like Mystery Science Theater. They just they talk about it afterwards. It's not like live.
Interesting.
And it's kind of amazing how they're able to talk about a 40-minute Star Trek episode for like an hour and a half, but like it's usually very entertaining. But I've recently started listening to a podcast called The Beef and Dairy Network.
Yeah.
And I would recommend this to anyone. It's the most hilarious thing I have ever heard. I laugh out loud when I listen to it. It's a fictional podcast about the British beef and dairy industry. And they have comedians like call in as like fake experts. Like in the first episode, they talk to somebody who says he's from the European Space Agency, and they're like, "So, have you found any hoof prints on Mars?" And they're like, "Are you expecting to find the fifth meat?" And they do like tickers of milk prices that are always ridiculous. And they're like, "Let's check the Japanese cheese index. They still don't like it."
That was interesting. I'll have to check it out. I feel very disconnected from our generation in the sense that I don't listen to a ton of podcasts. I don't know. Like I still listen to a ton of music, and I watch TV shows, and I listen to a few news podcasts, but I haven't found like an entertainment podcast that just I look forward to every week.
Yeah,
my girlfriend is like pod crazy. She loves podcasts.
Yeah,
I know
there's some gold out there, but
would want me to call out Pod Save America, which is her favorite.
Oh, okay.
She got me into The Daily. I really like it. Michael Barbaro in the morning. But yeah, I don't know yet. I need to start looking for some.
Yeah, it's almost like there's some of those podcasts that are informative, like The Daily, and then there's others that you just kind of have to like the personalities, and it doesn't really matter what they're saying.
Yeah, a buddy of
that
mine.
you're just kind of enjoy it.
A buddy of mine had me listen to his favorite podcast, and it's like Trap Chapo House or something, or Chapo Trap House or something like that. Can't remember exactly, but it's just like these like 5 dudes up in New York, and they just get together and just talk about shit. You know, like the episode I listened to was like about Dune. They're just generally talking about Dune.
Mm-hmm.
I was like halfway through it, and I was like, man, I wish I had read Dune so I'd know what they're talking about.
I wish I could have any context for this.
Yeah, I was like, I don't have any context for what's going on. But yeah, I see what you mean. Like, if you like the people, then it doesn't really matter what they're talking about. You just want to like say, hey, what are they talking about today?
Yeah.
I can understand that. I haven't found that yet. I haven't delved into it.
You just gotta try some out. You know, some that I've tried I really didn't like. Others I gave a few episodes to go and then kind of dropped out. But
I completely forgot this one. Then there was a new episode today which my girlfriend even texted me about. But Trump, what Trump can teach about con law. Phenomenal podcast.
You got me into that, and I've really enjoyed it.
There's a new episode today. I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but that one is really good. I really
did you listen to the episode about challenge coins?
Yes, I did. It was good.
That makes me want to have a challenge coin of my own. maybe we can have one for the show.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. At CapCon in Las Vegas 2020.
What's that from?
Oh, that's just like the DJ air horn sound effect.
Somebody else has done it in a show or something, because I remember hearing it. I know what you're talking about though, that sound. But I feel like someone else has made it with their mouth.
Like I've got a friend that at this point we'll just send each other a picture of an air horn, and that's what that means.
That's funny.
Claire, I hope we answered your question.
Yeah.
But any closing thoughts, Aaron?
No, I mean, the Recappening I feel was like a success. If we can maybe next time decimate the news, then we can do that. But either way, I like this format. I like to kind of going back over the things that we've talked about. Obviously, Iran, the Koreas, guns, they're not going anywhere, so we're probably going to be talking about them again.
Yeah, maybe eventually we can make this as a premium episode that we can put behind the paywall.
There you go.
Capitalism,
Patreon.
There we go.
Well, that is it for Arbitrary and Capricious, episode 12, the Recappening. Signing off.
All right, have a good week, everybody.